So, I guess what you're driving at is that people that have nightmares aren't as well prepared, or somehow aren't as receptive to the true path as those that don't.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right, and I guess there's no actual proof or evidence to support this theory?
Well, you might think not, but actually, you might be wrong. Dreams!
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 Dreams! Dreams, dreams, dreams. I'm so glad you finally got onto this dream bit. This is much more up my street. This is what I wanted to get into in the last episode instead of all that dumb sleep waffle.
Hey, I like sleep waffle. I find sleep waffle interesting, alright? So, wind your neck in.
Okay. Neck fully wound in. Now, get on with it.
Righto, cracking on then. We established last time that science still has a lot of ground to cover when trying to figure out sleep. You know, they're all over the place with it. And a big part of sleep is obviously our dreams.
And therein lies further bafflement of the bods of science.
Yeah. For the ample-brained folk amongst us, dreams are an enigma that they just can't seem to quite crack.
And I don't think they ever will. Dreams are far too effed up to be explained.
Yeah, they can be. They can be totes mental. Lots of stuff about dreams is bonkers and makes absolutely no sense.
Right, do it then. List me up, baby.
Yeah, I'm going to spoil you today. I've got a list of stuff that's bonkers about dreams, and then I also have a list of potential theories as to what dreams actually are.
Ah, 2-list Tuesday.
Yeah, except that it's Sunday.
Yeah, but we wrote the episode on Tuesday.
Oh, just shut up. Right, answer me this. Have you ever had an absolutely epic dream?
Wait. Why are you asking me this? We are the same person. If I know it, you know it. You do get that, right?
Yeah, but play along for crying out loud. We need to incorporate some storytelling elements for dramatic effect.
Alright, fine, carry on.
Right. Have you ever had an absolutely epic dream?
Yeah.
One that seems to go on for hours and hours, covering a lot of ground, you know,
Yeah.
with its own intricate story and its own set of twists and developments, only to be woken up and find out that only a few minutes or maybe even half an hour has actually passed.
Yes!
Yeah, of course you have. And that's point number one. Time in dreams tends to be different.
Yeah, we've all seen Inception.
Yeah, but don't pretend that we understood it.
Oh, well, I understood it. Or at least I understood the general gist.
No, you didn't. But you are right. They do call it out in that movie that time in dreams can move at a very different pace than in the real world.
Awesome. Right, well, we all understand that. Excellent bit of weirdness. Hit me with another.
Okay then. Point number two. We can also have recurring dreams. That is, we can potentially have the same dream over and over again. Sometimes it can be night after night, or sometimes it can be separated by weeks, months, or even years.
Oh yeah, coolios. We've experienced that one ourselves too. So, next.
Bit thirsty for the list today, aren't you?
Yeah, get on with it.
Alright, okay. Point number three. Dream-dependent déjà vu.
Ooh, dream déjà vu?
Yeah, like when you're doing something and you get that familiar sense of, oh, we've done this before.
You mean like regular déjà vu?
Yeah, only you realise that you haven't done it before, but actually, you dreamt it before.
Ah, I see. So, do you think that maybe all déjà vu could just be that? And maybe we just don't remember all of the dreams?
Well, maybe. And funnily enough, point number four, it is extremely difficult to remember your dreams.
Is it? We always seem to remember ours.
Well, no, not really. We remember some of our dreams, but only if they're wild enough for us to immediately write them down, or to tell Bubsy about them so she can remind us later. If we try to remember them without any sort of prompting, generally, we just can't. The details, they tend to be pretty vivid for the first few minutes after waking up, but then as the day passes, they fade away very, very quickly. For example, can you remember what dreams we were having last night?
Yeah, of course I can. Well, one was, something to do with sharks doing synchronised swimming, I think, but...
Yeah, but you can't remember any of the actual details, can you? You can remember a vagueness, but you can't remember any actual stuff.
No, you're right, I actually can't. I think you've got me on this one.
Okay, sorted. Point number five then. You predominantly only have one type of dream.
Oh, no, you're definitely talking crap. Our dreams are all over the place.
Yeah. Let me explain what I mean by type, first of all. I'm not talking about the genre of dream, because there are lots of those. You know, teeth falling out, being chased, learning to fly, realising that you're naked in public, all that sort of stuff, right? But what I'm talking about isn't the genre, it's the overall feeling of the dream. Now, during many sleep studies, it's become apparent that dreamers will typically experience either overwhelmingly negative dreams or overwhelmingly positive dreams.
Ah, right, gotcha. So, happy dreams versus sad dreams, yeah?
Yeah, and where people do still have both on occasion, they do tend to lean more commonly one way rather than the other.
And ours are always more positive, aren't they?
Yeah.
Even when we're dealing with some sort of pretty dark and harrowing material, we rarely ever get stressed or fearful about it, do we?
No, that's right. We're usually some sort of saviour or superpowered demigod and end up having a complete whale of a good time, like the mutant invasion dream we had last time.
Yeah, that was a blast. It was exactly like playing an awesome first-person shooter, right? But are you telling me that not everyone has such fun and happy dreams then?
Precisely. A lot of people almost always have very upsetting or very stressful dreams.
Oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, it does, but let's not dwell on it for now, right? Okay. Point number 6.
Can I read this one out?
Well, yeah, if you want to.
Well, yeah, you're always taking the driving seat and doing all the nerdy talking and stuff, so it's starting to sound like you're the intelligent part of our personality and I'm the thicko one. I would just like to get a little bit more involved so people don't jump to the wrong conclusions.
Yeah, okay, shoot. Fire away then.
Okay, cool. Point number 6 on the bonkers list then. Suspender dreams.
Suspended dreams.
Oh, right, what did I say?
You know what you said. Come on. Don't make me ban you from talking privileges.
Yeah, as if you're tough enough to pull that off. Come on then, Roadman. Explain what suspender dreams are.
Suspended dreams are just that. They're dreams which temporarily get suspended, but then continue later. So imagine we're having the best dream ever.
What, like us and Bubsy out walking the dogs, only in this dream the dogs are actually behaving for a change?
Yeah, that would be a good dream. And then imagine someone disturbs us from that dream, like there's a noise or something and we wake up.
Bummer.
Yeah, total bummer. But then, even though we've been fully awake and conscious and disconnected from that perfect dream world, we still manage to nod back off and somehow pick up right where we left off, continuing that same dream we've been having previously.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, no suspenders involved then?
No, well, unless that was what you were dreaming about in the first place, but probably not.
Yeah, most likely not. So, on to point number 7 then, mass dreams. So, what are mass dreams? Is this a church thing?
Ha, no. Bless you, my child, that your mind went there. But no. I don't mean Sunday Mass. Mass dreams are basically akin to mass hallucinations. Only in this scenario it's a dream that gets shared by many different people instead of a hallucination.
Oh, right. Can that happen then?
Well, supposedly, yeah, although no scientific study has as yet taken place. Anecdotally, it tends to be people that share a strong connection that have these mass dreams. Like tight communities, friend groups, twins, same household, and blah blah.
I'm not sure I like that one. It's a little bit freaky.
Well, maybe this next one will be more up your street. So, point number 8, lucid dreams. This is where people are aware that they are actually dreaming. And, in many occasions, they can actually take charge of their dream, basically putting themselves in the driver's seat. And they can guide the dream wherever they choose to go.
Oh yeah, that is a pretty cool one. So, can they actually invent their own dreams in essence then?
Yeah, to an extent I suppose they can. To an extent.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I wish we could do that. Where do you think we would go?
Well, if it was up to me, I'd probably just take us back to bed. All I can seem to think about these days is just how tired we are.
Huh, wow. You really do have zero imagination whatsoever. It's no wonder no one ever watches our content.
Oh right, and you think you could do better, do you?
Oh, well, maybe. At least I'll give it a little bit more pizzazz, some razzle-dazzle.
Yeah, right, sure. Anyway, that's our list of the most commonly known sleep oddities over and done with. So shall we move on to the list of dream theories that we've created?
We've created? Are you including me in that?
Well, yeah. Like you said earlier, you don't want people to think that you're the dumber part of our personality. From here on out, I'm attributing this list to the both of us.
Aw, thanks, man. See, you can be a nice person from time to time.
Hey, I'm always a nice person.
Oh, well, agree to disagree.
Did you know you can be a real dick sometimes?
Yeah. It has been mentioned from time to time.
Anywho, on with the list, right? Into the meat of it. What are dreams? Theory number 1,
numero uno.
Are dreams a visual representation of our subconscious brain organising and processing our daily experiences and our daily emotions? Now this one is a biggie on the list. We're opening with this one because this is the current scientifically accepted explanation for dreams.
Right, but is it true though? It's hard, certainly for us personally, to relate any of our vividly weird dreams back to any sort of actual daily experience or emotion.
Yeah, but the scientific take on this is that dreams are just glimpses of our experiences and emotions, only represented in a more metaphorical way.
Oh, right, so when we see mutant bananas in our dream, for example, that could actually just be us subconsciously worrying that we aren't eating enough fruit?
Yeah, it could possibly be something like that. We are getting on in years, so we do worry about our health.
Okay, and so do you think this is a good theory then?
Well, honestly, no. I think that as far as explanations go, it's all a little bit too convenient an answer, really, for me. It's a bit too wishy-washy.
Oh, okay, in what way?
Well, you could effectively twist anything in a dream to be about anything else, couldn't you? You know, depending on your point of view. So let's go back to our mutant banana dream. In that dream, we were subject to an invasion of mutant bananas whilst we were drinking on a pier in a seaside town, so we could effectively chalk that up to a multitude of different things, metaphorically. It could be that we were secretly just craving a beach day, or that we were somehow lacking enough excitement in our life and we wanted to be a hero for a change, or that we were worried about the looming threat of another world war, or that we were subconsciously concerned about the effects of all that late night binge drinking we did as a young adult, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There's lots of ifs, buts and speculations and no clear-cut answer there, is there?
Exactly, yeah. It's all a little bit loosey-goosey for me to accept that particular theory.
Right, what about dream interpretations though, you know? Isn't there a whole branch of psychology dedicated to that sort of thing now?
Well, yeah, probably, but who's to say how much of it rings true and how much is just conjecture?
Right, so as a test, could we not try and apply their interpretations to our own dream and see if any of that rings true?
Yeah, I suppose we could give it a go. You know, but you might have noticed though that we are not ourselves a psychologist. And it's not like we have one locked away in our basement, they're ready for whenever we might need them. So, do you have anything we can use as a reference or guide?
Well, no, but, you know, the internet is a wealth of info and fun stuff, and I did actually find something called dreamybot.com.
Dreamybot.com? That sounds somehow sordid.
Right, well, no, it's not, so don't go there. It's essentially an AI dream interpretation tool, and I did give it the gist of our mutant banana dream, and from it inferred that basically we are unhappy and feeling trapped in our day job because, you know, we're underachieving and we feel unfulfilled.
Right, well, I could have told you that without the dream interpretation.
Yeah, and to be honest, I did sort of have to nudge it in that direction a little bit, but you know what? I'm not mocking it at all. It was actually quite a lot of fun. It's kind of like a pretend AI therapist.
Yeah, but fun aside, you did have to basically guide it into confirming a feeling in us that we ourselves already know we are feeling, right?
Well, yeah, but it does clearly say that it's for entertainment purposes only and it's not actually for any real advice.
Yeah, fair enough, but it does kind of confirm my problem with this whole theory though, you know. Pretty much any dream can be twisted to fit any meaning in a roundabout way.
Well, yeah, that is true.
Dreams being us processing emotions and daily events, to me, seems pretty tenuous at best.
Yeah, and let's face it, it's not like anyone could ever prove what a banana in a dream was supposed to represent, you know, other than a banana.
Yeah, and that does perfectly encompass one of the big problems with a lot of the science around sleep, you know. A lot of it simply isn't proven in any way whatsoever because the reality is they just can't prove it. They can pose a hypothesis, which goes on to become the accepted theory, but then, without a way to quantifiably prove it, it's still just a theory.
Yeah, a theory that bananas in dreams equate to boring day jobs.
Exactly. When it comes to science, this sort of stuff is always going to be educated conjecture at best.
Okay, right, yeah, fair enough, but that's enough mainstream science bashing for one episode. What's up next?
Yeah, up next, do you want to read this one out?
No, I think we've done enough fiddling with the format, so let's stick with what we got, yeah? Otherwise, we're going to be here all day.
Okay, right. Next up then is the theory that dreams are a social aid. And this one encompasses something called dream empathy theory. Now, dream empathy theory works on the assumption that our dreams are intentionally weird and bizarre in order to compel us to want to share them with others.
Ah, like story time with old papa.
Yeah, exactly. We are compelled to tell them to our friends and to our family and to our colleagues, like they're some sort of work of literary fiction. And in doing so, it not only increases our drive to be social and to share and to communicate, but it also elicits empathy from the listeners, because they can identify, in sort of an abstract way, with the dreamer, in much the same way as people empathise and identify with other literary characters.
So, in a roundabout way then, it's sort of helping people to better understand one another.
Well, yeah, I guess. Or at least helping to bring them closer together, helping to build bonds and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool theory. I definitely like this one a lot more than I liked the last one.
Yeah, and we are defo guilty of spouting out details of our bizarre and random dreams to Bubsy the second that we open our eyes. We're always compelled to let her know what sort of weirdness and madness our random brain has come up with now.
Yeah. Bubsy! I had a dream! There was an 8-foot tall slug in our back garden with speakers for eyes, and he was blasting out old school 90s dance tunes, and we were breakdancing on the kitchen countertops.
Oh, yeah, exactly like that, I think we can definitely relate personally to this particular theory.
Yeah, but again, no actual proof is there. It's all just conjecture still.
Yeah, so we might as well get this one out there right now, Everything on this list is just conjecture. Especially this next one. Dreams are glimpses into our past lives.
No. Yeah, no.
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
So you don't think that in our past life one of our work colleagues may have been a cannibal? Or that at some point we fought off a mutant invasion?
No, of course not. In any way, both of those dreams were set in modern times. In fact, most of the dreams we have are loosely current day.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with that, but there are cases where people have dreamt of past happenings, only to find out later that they were actually true. There's a really famous case of someone called Dorothy Eady, who fell down the stairs as a young child and died, albeit briefly.
Oh, they brought her back from the brink, yeah?
Yeah, only afterwards she started having these dreams about ancient Egypt, and in particular the Temple of Seti, and she became convinced she'd lived there in a past life. So, when she reached adulthood, she actually moved to Egypt. She married a local guy there, got involved with a lot of the archaeology going on, and she was unnervingly good at it. She could point at the ground, tell people, dig right there, and then she could tell them exactly what they would find if they did. She'd go, there's an ancient garden there, there's a drain over there, there's a culvert under there, etc. And every time she did that, she would be bang on right.
Ah, as if she'd been there before, right?
Yeah, exactly. She knew what was there because she'd seen it in her dreams.
Right, like she was seeing her past life.
Yeah, precisely. And there's also the case of someone called William Barnes, who started having nightmares at the grand old age of 4 about a ship that had 4 big smokestacks, and it was sinking around him, and eventually he died. In the dream, of course. And shortly after he'd started having those dreams, he began to insist that his parents called him Tommy instead of William. And he kept asking where his 2 brothers were, because his parents seemed to know nothing about them. And this sort of went on for his entire life until the age of 25-ish, when eventually he sought out some help. And he was hypnotised. And whilst they had him under, he suddenly began speaking in a heavy Irish accent. And afterwards, when they woke him up, he suddenly declared his name was Thomas Andrews. Now, Thomas Andrews was actually the designer of the Titanic. And he had 2 brothers. And he was Irish, and he died on board the same Titanic, an obviously famous ship with 4 smokestacks.
Oh, that's a pretty freaky coinkydink, isn't it?
Yeah, and you want to know what's even freakier?
Yeah, of course.
William Barnes was actually born on the same day the Titanic sank.
No, that's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, and people point to these sorts of things as proof of reincarnation. So it might be somewhat plausible that our dreams can give us glimpses into past lives.
Yeah, I guess a handful of cases could suggest that, but that still doesn't explain other dreams, does it? It still doesn't explain why most of our dreams are based in present day.
Yeah, but it could though. There are many different myths around reincarnation. Many Native American tribes, for example, believe that a soul can be reincarnated into multiple different bodies, so that people can actually share a soul. There are even some beliefs that say we don't just reincarnate into our next lives, but we can also reincarnate into past ones too.
What does that mean?
It means that our soul, as it were, might have already lived through this time period once before, or even multiple times before, and in multiple different bodies, and that we might actually have reincarnated from a future body back to this time. It could be the 100th time we've been here. That would give us plenty of past life data from this time to dream about.
Yeah, but it still doesn't explain the bonkers bit about dreams, though. There's nothing even remotely bonkers going on right now, is there?
Yeah, that is very true. So why don't we see if we can find a different theory that explains that a little better? Number 4 on our list is that dreams are a method of preparing us for future trials and tribulations.
Oh, well, cool. So how exactly does this one work then?
Okay, so this one is made up of a collection of different theories, most notably the threat simulation theory and the social simulation theory. In essence, both these suggest that our dreams intentionally place us into threatening or awkward situations.
Yeah, like being chased or suddenly realising that you're naked in public.
Yeah, and it subjects us to a filtered down version of those same feelings and emotions, the same things you'd expect to experience in those situations. It effectively gives us the opportunity to practice dealing with those problems, but in a completely safe and risk-free environment.
Okay, and what exactly is that supposed to achieve other than to really freak people out and make sure they don't want to go back to sleep?
Well, the theory suggests that by practicing these things in our sleep, it means that we are more mentally prepared for them. And therefore, if something similar were to occur in real life, we could deal with them much more effectively.
Oh, okay, and I suppose this is why some people say they often dream about things that worry them, like their hair falling out or teeth falling out, etc.
Yeah, it's playing on their mind, and therefore their subconscious secretly starts prepping them for that exact eventuality.
Okay, but I'm starting to see a flaw in this logic though.
Oh, right, okay, go on.
Well, we are a natural born worrier. We worry and stress about absolutely everything, So if our subconscious is supposedly preparing us for things that worry us whilst we sleep, then why is it that we hardly ever have nightmares or negative dreams? You would think that we would need more negative dreams because clearly we need more mental prep for those than most people do.
Yeah, that is very true. But did you ever stop to consider the fact that perhaps the reason we're always so stressed and always so anxious and always so worried is because our subconscious isn't preparing us with these dreams the way it's supposed to? Maybe if we did have more nightmares, we'd be in a stronger emotional state and therefore wouldn't stress and worry as much.
Ah, yeah, okay. I didn't think of it that way. So are you behind this particular theory then?
Yeah, I guess I am. At least more so than the others so far. I kind of quite like the idea of our subconscious being the source of all of our ills, It gives us something else to blame other than our own stupid life choices.
Yeah, that does kind of take the pressure off the two of us, doesn't it? It doesn't bode well for the future though, does it? If our own subconscious is failing us, then what hope do we have of ever getting better?
Yeah, let's not dwell on that too much, Next one up. Our dreams are glimpses into the future.
Okay, pretty self-explanatory this one. So if dreams are glimpses into the future then, I suppose that would explain all those odd moments of dream déjà vu that people get.
Yeah, but those moments are only a small sample of a massive dream pool. I think again, this theory is mostly predicated on those glimpses into the future being more metaphorical in nature.
Oh, so we're back to bananas equaling boring jobs again, are we?
Yeah, exactly that. I think that this one has us back in that same old mire of dreams being twisted to fit whatever context we desire at that moment in time.
Yeah, this metaphorical thing is a little bit too much to wrap my head around. I don't like it.
Yeah, and what's more, I can't help but think that if we'd somehow evolved some ability to see into the future as a way to warn us or guide us, then why the hell would our dreams end up being so cryptic, If this was a natural sort of survival method, then wouldn't it have evolved to be much more direct and therefore much more successful? Our dreams wouldn't need all this madness and preamble. It would just need a voice telling us in no uncertain terms, don't go on that camping trip with Joe Bloggs, he's a secret weekend murderer.
Yeah, that would be much more sensible, wouldn't it? But I'm assuming that for someone to propose this theory in the first place, there has to be some more literal examples of dreams predicting the future, right?
Yeah, there are, and there's actually quite a scary amount of them. If you are after some examples, then straight away I can do you a 30 for the price of one. A place called Aberfan, South Wales, UK, in the mid-1960s, 30 residents of the same town were haunted by dreams which alluded to a massive tragedy at the local school. One young girl told her mother of a dream where she went to school only to find that the school wasn't there anymore. It was basically covered in black, as she described it, and then she proceeded to declare to her mother that she was no longer afraid to die.
Ooh, just what a young mom wants to hear, right?
Yeah, freaky. And another child in the same town drew a picture based on one of his dreams, where a group of people were digging in the local hillside. And above that, he wrote the words, "The End."
Why do I get the impression this one's gonna end on a massive downer?
Well, because it does. In fact, it was utterly tragic. In 1966, heavy rainfall caused a slag pile from a local mine to collapse, sending 500,000 tonnes of debris sliding down the hillside where it buried the local school. 116 children and 28 adults were killed, including the same 2 children who made those 2 premonitions.
Oh, damn it, man, that's awful.
Yeah, it is. It's heartbreaking. But those 30 sets of predictions were so convincing that it prompted the formation of the British Premonitions Bureau, ran by psychiatrist John Barker. So he clearly thought there was something to it.
Right, okay, and do these premonitions ever predict something happy, or were they always so tragic?
Let me think. President Lincoln predicts his own assassination, World War One, plane crashes, World War Two, Kennedy assassination, train derailment, volcano eruption, murder, earthquakes, cancer... no, they seem to be mostly negative.
Okay then, in that case, John Barker can shove his bureau up his ass. I'm calling bull on this one. I refuse to believe there's nothing positive worth seeing in the future of this world.
Whoa, calm down. There is one where a guy dreamt about meeting his future wife, only to find out after they were married, she'd also dreamt about meeting him. So, that one's pretty nice.
Yeah, alright, okay then. I take it back, or at least I take a very small part of it back. If he really wants to, Mr. Barker can leave the tip of his precious bureau poking out.
Right, would it help if I told you that the bureau only lasted for 2 years?
Yeah, it would help, yeah.
Well, it was dissolved in 1968, okay, so chillax, be zen, and let's move swiftly on. Theory number 6. Dreams allow us to see into alternate realities.
Ooh, now you're speaking my language.
Yep, this one suggests that our dreams allow us to see across the multiverse. This one would definitely explain all the randomness and bizarreness, you know. If there's an infinite number of alternate realities out there, then it stands to reason that all things must be possible.
Yeah, there'd be some realities where we were rich, you know, or good looking, or both, or charming, or that too, or where we were a slug, or where we were a crime-fighting hedgehog with 6 noses. Haha, yeah, you just want to see if AI can render a video of that, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Well, did it work?
Well, I have no idea yet, do I? We'll have to wait and see if it makes it into the final draft.
Okay, so anyway, how exactly would this theory work? You know, how can we see into a different dimension?
You mean reality?
Yeah, that, yeah.
Well, I have no idea really, you know. We certainly can't see into another reality with our own eyeballs, you know, but maybe there's something to do with the specific electrical makeup of our brains, you know, maybe somehow it can achieve it subconsciously.
Yeah, but is that likely really?
Who knows, you know, science is learning more and more new stuff every single day.
Right, so, science wibbly-wobbly stuff aside, yeah? If we're only seeing into alternate realities, then how is it people can have lucid dreams? You know, how can you control what's going on in another plane of existence?
Again, dunno, but I do still quite like this one, you know, purely because of the possibilities. This one seems to have a much broader reach than any of the others.
Yeah, and it is quite nice to think that there's an alternate version of us somewhere out there with 6 noses. Because, at the end of the day, the dogs don't smell quite bad enough already.
They don't smell bad at all. They're little angels, you know, they smell of potpourri.
Yeah, and if you think that's true, you are 109% totally deluded.
If you say so, bro.
Right, so, what's next then? Are we now done with these theories?
Nope, there is one more left, and this last one is... Dreams let us see into the afterlife.
Okay. So, is the afterlife also filled with utter madness and mutant fruit then?
Well, again, I don't know, but I think that depends entirely on your own interpretation of what the afterlife is.
Yeah, okay, and there are quite a lot of those, aren't there?
Yeah, there's quite a few, and they aren't all just fluffy white clouds and harp music either, you know. There may be a prevailing theme in a lot of afterlife myths whereby they are some sort of paradise, but what is a paradise for one person isn't necessarily a paradise for everyone else, you know. So for the afterlife to be a genuine paradise, I guess it must be subjective depending on the person.
What, and you think our paradise for some reason is us fighting off an invading army of mutant bananas through the use of Italian footwear?
Well, maybe, or maybe that was just part of it, you know. We did feel pretty damn boss when we were having that dream, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we were totally owning it.
Yeah, right, so maybe the paradise is less about the landscape and more about the feeling, you know? There's no saying that either that landscape or that feeling needs to be constant. Maybe our paradise is actually a rolling series of strange events that we end up thoroughly enjoying because at the end of the day they take us away from the monotony of our prior daily existence.
Okay, so how do you explain all those people that keep having all those nightmares then? Are they the ones destined to go to hell or something like that?
Well, I'm really not sure how to comment on that one. You know, I don't want to suggest that someone's going to end up in hell just because they've had a nightmare. But it does make me think about the Book of the Dead, though.
What, the Book of the Dead?
Yeah, the Bardo Thodol. It's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now, we personally obviously haven't read it, but allegedly it explains what happens to people after they die. You know, and summing up in a nutshell, it states that there are actually two endings. One of which is good and one of which is bad. And which one you get depends entirely on how well prepared your mind is, you know. If our minds are prepared for death, the transition is gentle and easy. Whereas if we are unprepared, our mind has a few, let's just say, trials and tribulations to deal with on its path. And the Book of the Dead is effectively a guide to help ensure people are better prepared and therefore gain the easier path.
So, I guess what you're driving at then is that people that have nightmares somehow aren't as well prepared or somehow aren't as receptive to the true path as those that don't.
Yeah, exactly that. But just because they have nightmares, it doesn't mean they won't eventually make it onto that happy path. It just means it won't be as easy.
Right, and I guess there's no actual proof or evidence to support this theory?
Well, you might think not, but actually, you might be wrong. For one, nightmares are typically most common between the ages of 3 and 12, you know, and they tend to fizzle out as we get older. Almost as if we're becoming more prepared.
Yeah, but again, that's anecdotal, isn't it? You know, it doesn't actually mean anything.
Alright, okay then. Let me pivot a little bit, okay? Instead, I'm going to tell you about an experiment carried out on hospital patients who are at the end of their lives, okay? And I'll keep it as brief as possible because we've already waffled on for a hell of a lot today. Basically, a Dr. Jimo Borjgin was monitoring the brain activity of patients as they were being taken off their life support. Now, these patients had already been declared brain dead following either accidents or sickness, you know, so there was no chance they would recover. But what Dr. Borjgin discovered was that after their life support was turned off, and after they had been declared medically deceased for several minutes, their brains suddenly sparked back to life, you know. And I mean, it went off the charts, right?
Yeah, but wouldn't that just be like random neurons firing as the brain was dying?
Well, no, because these neurons weren't even firing when the patient was alive. Remember, these are people who were declared totally brain dead and had been for some time. And also, it wasn't just random activity either. It was activity specifically in parts of the brain that handled communication, logical thinking, problem solving and movement. It was almost as if, in that person's mind's eye, they were going somewhere, or doing something, or talking to someone.
Right, and so what has this got to do with dreams?
Right, I'm getting to it, okay? So, because of the specific brain activity being recorded, people have started citing this as proof that the afterlife does exist. Now, in pretty much every religion and belief that pertains to the afterlife, there is always a transitional period where people have to go somewhere, or do something, or talk to someone, you know. The Egyptians believed in the gauntlet, which was a series of challenges that you were required to undertake to see if you were worthy of entering the duat, or afterlife. And then Greeks also had the river Styx, where you had to go and barter with the ferryman to secure your crossing into the underworld. Christians also, they have the ascent to the pearly gates, you know, and then potentially the latter descent back into hell if it doesn't go quite so well, you know. And even people with no prior religious belief who have like near-death experiences have often reported travelling along a white tunnel or being greeted by deceased loved ones who they talk with and invariably get told to bugger off back to Earth, right?
Okay, so it's starting to sound to me like the end of life is a bit of a nightmare for people who are, say, wheelchair bound or people who are mute. You know, but I'm still not seeing how we're supposed to connect any of this back to dreams.
Right, okay, so can your muggle portion of our brain not draw parallels here between the spike of brain activity seen in Dr. Borjgin's experiment and the weird sorts of brain activity seen during sleep? You know, the stuff we were wittering on about in the previous boring episode.
Ah, okay, now I see. So you're suggesting that the end of life passing over brain activity could be the same sort of brain activity as what we see in our weird dreams. Yeah, precisely that, you know. If that activity is indeed our souls or consciousnesses shuffling off this mortal coil, then could dreams not also be our souls or consciousnesses sneaking glimpses past that same veil as well? You know, just sort of like dipping our toe in so we can get our minds prepped for it. Oh, right, so almost like the prepping for future trauma thing. You're suggesting that dreams could actually be us getting prepared for the afterlife instead. Bingo bongo, yeah, exactly that. So, life for you then is just kindergarten for corpses, right? Well, that's a bit of a dark way to express it, but yeah, basically. And it would also go some way to explain why people sleep less and less as they age. You know, babies, they're pretty much asleep around the clock, aren't they? Well, unless they're crying or pooping. Yeah. And then when we reach our teenage years, we sleep for like 10 or 12 hours. And then once you become a young adult, you're like 8 or 9 hours. Then when you're a regular adult, you're 7 or 8 hours, you know. And then, of course, once you're an old fogey, you sleep for the grand total of about 30 mins between trips to the lavatory. Yeah, so you're saying we're sleeping less because we've already done all that prep work, as it were. Yeah, why not? Seems like a fun idea, doesn't it? Yeah, I gotta admit, I do kind of like that idea as well. Yeah, out of all these theories, it's definitely my favourite, you know. It might not be the most likely or the most logical, but I do kind of like the idea that there's something else out there for us beyond this sad inky blackness. Yeah, and it would also make all this traumatic life stuff much more worthwhile, you know, if we end up making it into that happy path. If our dreams are anything to go by, then the afterlife is going to be one hell of a wild ride, right? Yeah, it's going to be bonkers fun. And believing there's something else beyond this life can also bring a lot of comfort too, you know, especially if that place can be as wild or as peaceful as we can imagine. We could revisit people and places that we miss, you know. We could go on new crazy adventures. We could be reunited with our beloved pets. And we'd never have to see our work colleagues or our friends ever again. Haha, right, yeah, don't kid yourself. We do not have any friends, right? But I'm definitely 100% with you on the work crowd, but you know, we can defo do without those. Cool. So, is that it then? Are we finished? Is this just finally done for the day? Yep, done for now, I guess. I think it's time we had a well-earned rest while we start daydreaming about the next one. Awesome. So, pizza then? Really? Are we going to do that at the end of every single episode? Well, yeah, of course we are, you know. There's always room for some pizza.